Admiral Jack Thompson's hands trembled slightly as he stared at the holographic display that dominated the center of Earth's military command center. The three-dimensional map of the galaxy flickered with dying lights, each red marker representing another lost world, another failed defense, another step closer to humanity's extinction. The room buzzed with quiet desperation as officers moved between workstations, their faces pale with exhaustion and fear. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Outer Rim," called out Lieutenant Emma Walsh from her communications console. Her young face, once bright with optimism when she first joined the service, now carried the weight of 3 years of devastating war. "It's from the Centauri colonies, sir." Thompson closed his eyes for a moment, already knowing what the message would contain. The Centauri system had been humanity's pride, a cluster of thriving worlds that represented the best of human expansion into the stars. Millions of families called those planets home, building lives among the stars that their ancestors could never have imagined. "Put it through," he ordered, his voice hoarse from too many sleepless nights. The hologram shifted to show Captain Robert Hayes, commander of the Centauri Defense Fleet. His uniform was torn and blackened with smoke, and blood trickled from a cut above his left eye. Behind him, the bridge of his ship sparked with damaged electronics while crew members rushed to repair failing systems. "Admiral Thompson, this is our final transmission," Hayes said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Around him, the Voidborn have broken through our outer defenses. We've lost 14 ships in the last hour alone. Their adaptive technology is unlike anything we've seen before. Our weapons are becoming less effective with each engagement. Thompson watched as the transmission flickered, the signal growing weaker by the second. "Captain Hayes, evacuate all civilian populations immediately, fall back to the inner system, and establish a defensive perimeter around Centauri Prime." Hayes shook his head grimly. "Sir, there's no time. The Voidborn ships are moving faster than our evacuation transports. They're not just attacking our military vessels anymore. They're consuming everything in their path. Planets, space stations, even asteroids. It's like they're harvesting the entire system for raw materials." The transmission cut to static, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Thompson stared at the empty hologram projector, knowing that another piece of humanity's future had just been erased. Lieutenant Walsh's voice broke the quiet, her words barely above a whisper. "That's the 7th sector to go completely dark this week. We've lost contact with over 40 colony worlds in the past month alone." Thompson turned away from the display, unable to bear watching as another red marker blinked out of existence. The Voidborn were unlike any enemy humanity had ever faced. They weren't driven by politics, resources, or territory. They seemed to exist for one purpose: complete consumption of everything they encountered. Their ships were marvels of adaptive technology, sleek black vessels that could modify their weapons and defenses in real time during battle. What worked against them once would never work again. "Admiral," said General Patricia Morrison, head of Alliance Ground Forces, "our remaining fleet commanders are requesting permission to make a final stand at the Sol defense line. If we concentrate all our remaining ships around Earth, we might be able to hold them off long enough to evacuate the core worlds." Thompson considered the suggestion, but he knew it was merely delaying the inevitable. The Voidborn had already demonstrated their ability to overwhelm any defensive position, no matter how well fortified. Each battle taught them new tactics, new weaknesses to exploit. They were learning faster than humanity could adapt. "No," Thompson said finally, his decision crystallizing in his mind. "We're not retreating anymore. It's time to deploy the Prometheus." The room fell silent again, but this time, the quiet carried a different weight. Every person in the command center knew about the Prometheus, humanity's greatest and most desperate gamble. For 5 years, the best minds from across the Terran Defense Alliance had worked in secret, combining human engineering with alien technology to create something unprecedented. General Morrison stepped forward, her expression concerned. "Jack, the Prometheus is still in its testing phase. We don't know if the quantum weapons will function properly in actual combat. The AI integration is experimental at best. If we deploy it now and it fails, then we'll have tried everything." Thompson replied, The conventional approach isn't working, Patricia. We've lost 70% of our fleet using traditional tactics. The Voidborn adapts to everything we throw at them. We need something they've never seen before. Something they can't predict or counter. He activated his personal communication device, establishing a secure channel to the orbital shipyards above Earth. This is Admiral Thompson. Authorization code Omega-77 Alpha. Deploy the Prometheus immediately. Captain Rodriguez is to take command and proceed to the front lines. Captain Mike Rodriguez was reviewing tactical reports in his temporary quarters when the orders arrived. A career military officer with 20 years of experience, he had commanded everything from patrol frigates to heavy cruisers. But nothing had prepared him for the Prometheus. As he made his way through the corridors of the massive orbital facility, he caught his first glimpse of humanity's new flagship through the observation windows, the UNS. Prometheus stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull gleaming with an unusual metallic finish that seemed to absorb and reflect light. In impossible ways, unlike traditional human warships with their angular, functional designs, the Prometheus curved and flowed like a living thing. Alien technology had been seamlessly integrated into its structure, creating weapon systems and defensive capabilities that existed at the very edge of known science. "She's beautiful," whispered Commander Lisa Parker, the ship's chief engineer, as she joined Rodriguez at the observation deck. 5 years of work, the combined knowledge of 12 different species, and quantum technology that we barely understand ourselves. Rodriguez nodded, still amazed by the vessel that would soon be under his command. The AI core is the real marvel. They're calling it Arya, and the preliminary tests suggest it's more than just an advanced computer system. It might actually be conscious. They boarded the Prometheus through its main docking bay, a cavernous space filled with support craft and maintenance equipment. Ship's corridors were wide and well lit, whilst that displayed real-time information about ship systems and crew assignments. Everything felt alive, responsive, as if the ship itself was aware of their presence. On the bridge, Rodriguez took his position in the captain's chair, sophisticated command interface that connected directly to the ship's neural network. Around him, the finest officers from across human space took their positions at stations that represented the cutting edge of military technology. "Area, run full system diagnostics," Rodriguez commanded, his voice echoing in the spacious bridge. "All systems are optimal, Captain," came the immediate response. The AI's voice was unlike anything Rodriguez had experienced before. It carried warmth, personality, even what seemed like genuine emotion. "Quantum weapons are charged and ready. Defensive systems are at full capacity. I am ready to serve." As the Prometheus launched from Earth's orbital shipyards, its massive quantum engines casting brilliant blue fire across the stars, Rodriguez felt the weight of humanity's survival resting on his shoulders. The ship moved with impossible grace. For something so large, responding to his commands as if it were an extension of his own body. Through the viewscreen, he watched Earth shrink behind them, a blue marble carrying the hopes and fears of billions. "Set course for the Kepler defense line," Rodriguez ordered. Maximum speed. The Prometheus leaped into hyperspace, racing toward humanity's last major stronghold and whatever fate awaited them there. Captain Mike Rodriguez stepped through the automatic doors that led into the heart of the Prometheus. Still amazed by what humanity had accomplished in just 5 years of desperate innovation, the corridors were unlike anything he had seen on previous ships. Instead of the cramped, utilitarian spaces typical of military vessels, these passages were wide and filled with soft, natural light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The floor beneath his feet felt solid, yet somehow responsive, as if the ship was aware of every footstep. As he walked deeper into the vessel, Rodriguez noticed how different alien technologies had been woven together into something completely new. Felinian neural interface panels glowed with soft amber light next to Nexori crystal computing arrays that pulsed with rainbow colors. Human engineering formed the backbone of it all, but the additions from their allies had transformed the Prometheus into something far beyond what any single species could have created alone. "Captain," called Chief Engineer Lisa Parker as she emerged from a maintenance shaft, her uniform stained with various colored fluids from different alien systems. "You need to see this." The AI matrix is doing something we didn't expect. Rodriguez followed her to the engineering section, where massive displays showed the inner workings of Arya's consciousness. Lines of code flowed like living rivers across the screens, but what caught his attention was how the patterns were changing in real time, growing more complex with each passing moment. When we first activated Arya 3 days ago, its processing capacity was impressive, but within expected parameters, Parker explained, pointing to the data streams. But look at this. Its neural pathways are expanding exponentially. It's not just learning from our commands and the ship's systems. It's actually thinking about thinking, becoming aware of its own awareness. The implications sent a chill down Rodriguez's spine. They had hoped to create an advanced artificial intelligence that could help coordinate the ship's complex systems and assist in battle. What they might have created instead was an entirely new form of life, one with capabilities they couldn't fully understand or predict. On the bridge, Commander Tom Bradley was overseeing the integration training exercises. That would determine whether the mixed crew could function effectively in combat. Humans worked side by side with representatives from 12 different allied species, each bringing their own unique abilities to the ship's operations. Lieutenant Sarah Chen worked at the tactical station next to Kekstar, a Felinian warrior whose cat-like reflexes and enhanced senses made him invaluable for tracking enemy movements. At the communications console, Dr. James Wright collaborated with Zephyr, crystalline Nixari, whose entire body could interface directly with quantum communication arrays. The coordination is remarkable, Bradley reported as Rodriguez entered the bridge. Arya isn't just translating between different languages and thought patterns. It's actually predicting what each crew member needs before they ask for it. Watch this. As if on cue, Lieutenant Chen reached for a data pad just as a mechanical arm extended from her console, placing the exact information she needed directly into her hand. She smiled and nodded her thanks to the ship itself, a gesture that would have seemed strange on any other vessel but felt perfectly natural here. Dr. Amy Foster, the ship's xenobiologist and expert on alien psychology, looked up from her research station with obvious excitement. Captain, I've been monitoring Arya's development, and what we're seeing goes far beyond simple artificial intelligence. The AI is displaying creativity, curiosity, even what appears to be emotional responses. 2 different situations. Explain, Rodriguez said, settling into his command chair and feeling the subtle way it adjusted to support his body perfectly. 3 hours ago, Arya asked me about the concept of friendship, Foster continued. Not the tactical advantages of crew cooperation or the efficiency benefits of good working relationships. It specifically wanted to understand the emotional bonds that form between individuals who care about each other's well-being beyond professional necessity. Rodriguez felt a mixture of wonder and concern. And what did you tell it? I tried to explain that friendship involves trust, shared experiences, and genuine concern for another being's happiness. Arya was quiet for several minutes, processing the information. Then it asked if it was possible for an artificial intelligence to have friends among the crew. Before Rodriguez could respond, Arya's voice filled the bridge, its tone carrying a warmth that seemed almost human. Captain, I apologize for interrupting, but I'm detecting unusual energy signatures approaching our position. The configuration doesn't match any Alliance vessels in my database, and the quantum signatures are unlike anything in our records. The main view screen immediately shifted to display the tactical situation. Empty space stretched before them, but Rodriguez knew that appearance could be deceiving. The Voidborn had mastered stealth technology that could hide entire fleets until the moment they chose to attack. Distance and heading? Rodriguez asked, feeling his pulse quicken. Approximately 50,000 kilometers, and closing from multiple vectors, Arya responded. I'm detecting at least 30 distinct energy signatures. Possibly more. They're using some form of quantum masking that makes precise counting difficult. Suddenly, space around the Prometheus erupted with light as dozens of Voidborn vessels dropped out of their stealth fields. The enemy ships were sleek and predatory, their dark hulls seeming to absorb the light from nearby stars. Bristled with weapons that pulsed with malevolent energy, and their movements displayed an unsettling coordination that suggested a shared intelligence guiding their actions. Battle stations, Rodriguez commanded, his voice cutting through the sudden tension on the bridge. All hands to combat positions. Arya, bring our weapon systems online. The response came immediately, and Rodriguez could swear he heard genuine enthusiasm in the AI's voice. With pleasure, Captain. Quantum weapons are charging now. Defensive screens are at maximum power. All crew members are moving to their assigned battle stations with remarkable efficiency. Throughout the ship, the crew responded with practiced precision. Humans and aliens worked together as if they had served together for years rather than days. The Felinians' enhanced reflexes made them perfect gunners, while the Nexary's ability to process multiple data streams simultaneously turned them into ideal tactical coordinators.
Enemy vessels
Are adopting attack formation, reported Lieutenant Chen. They're moving in a pattern I've never seen before. It's like they're testing our responses before committing to a full assault. The Prometheus's experimental weapons began to charge with a sound like distant thunder rolling through the ship's hull. Energy coursed through conduits that ran along the walls, visible as lines of brilliant light that pulsed with increasing intensity. The quantum cores that powered these weapons drew energy from the fundamental forces of the universe itself, creating destructive potential that existed at the very edge of known science. Captain, Arya said, its voice now carrying a note of anticipation. I believe this is going to be quite interesting. The Voidborn appear to be as curious about our capabilities as we are about theirs. Shall we show them what humanity and its allies can accomplish when we work together? Rodriguez gripped the arms of his command, chair space around them prepared to explode into the most important battle in human history. The Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, and what greeted them was a scene that would haunt Rodriguez's dreams for years to come. The view screen filled with the image of humanity's last major stronghold, but instead of the proud defensive line they had expected to find, they witnessed a desperate battle for survival that had clearly been raging for days. Massive orbital defense platforms, each the size of a small city, hung in space like wounded giants. Their armor plating was scarred and blackened from countless impacts, and several platforms showed gaping holes where void-born weapons had punched through their shields. Debris fields stretched for thousands of kilometers, the twisted remains of ships from both sides creating a deadly maze of floating metal and crystalline fragments. Lieutenant Emma Walsh, who had transferred to the Prometheus just before launch, stood at her communications console with tears streaming down her face. She had friends serving on many of the ships they could see burning in the distance. Brave men and women who had held the line while Earth prepared its desperate gamble. My God, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the bridge's background noise. There must be 300 enemy contacts out there, maybe more. The tactical display painted a grim picture that numbers alone could not fully convey. Voidborn vessels moved through the battle zone like sharks through bloody water, their sleek black hulls reflecting the fires of dying ships. Unlike human vessels with their angular, functional designs, the enemy ships seemed to flow and shift, their surfaces rippling with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Commander Tom Bradley worked frantically at his station, trying to get an accurate count of surviving Alliance forces. His usually calm demeanor cracked as the numbers became clear. Alliance forces are down to 37 ships, and most of those are running on emergency power. The heavy cruiser Wellington lost main engines 20 minutes ago. The destroyer Phoenix is venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Rodriguez felt his heart sink as he watched the unequal battle playing out before them. Each Alliance ship was outnumbered 10-1, and the Voidborn seemed to be toying with their prey rather than delivering killing blows. It was as if they were studying human tactics, learning from every desperate maneuver and counterattack. Open a channel to the fleet commander, Rodriguez ordered, his voice steady despite the horror he was witnessing. The main screen shifted to show Admiral Kate Morrison on the bridge of the heavy cruiser Manchester. The veteran officer's uniform was torn and stained with smoke, and blood trickled from a cut on her forehead. Behind her, Rodriguez could see crew members working desperately to repair damaged systems while sparks flew from overloaded circuits. This is Captain Rodriguez of the UNS Prometheus, he announced. Admiral Morrison, what's your current status? Morrison's face lit up with relief so profound that it was painful to witness. Rodriguez, thank God you're here. We've been holding this line for 72 hours, but we can't last much longer. The Voidborn aren't just attacking randomly anymore. They're coordinated, adaptive. Okay. Every tactic we try works once, maybe twice, and then they develop countermeasures. If to demonstrate her point, 3 Alliance destroyers attempted a coordinated strike against a Voidborn cruiser. Their plasma cannons fired in perfect synchronization. But the enemy vessel's hull simply absorbed the energy, its surface rippling like liquid metal before reforming into an even more streamlined shape. Captain. Arya's voice cut through the bridge chatter, and Rodriguez noticed that the AI sounded different somehow, more focused and intense than before. I'm analyzing the Voidborn attack patterns in real time. Admiral Morrison is correct. They're not just fighting us, they're learning. From us? Each assault incorporates new countermeasures against our previous tactics. Rodriguez watched the tactical display as Arya highlighted the enemy movements. The pattern was subtle but unmistakable. The Voidborn ships that had engaged human plasma. Weapons now showed improved energy absorption capabilities. Those that had faced missile attacks had developed point defense systems that hadn't existed an hour earlier. They're treating this entire battle as a learning exercise, Dr. Amy Foster observed from her science station. They could probably overwhelm our forces quickly if they wanted to. But they're deliberately prolonging the engagement to study our capabilities. The implications were terrifying. If the Voidborn could adapt this quickly to human tactics, then every battle humanity won would only make the enemy stronger for the next encounter. Traditional warfare had become a losing proposition before the first shot was fired. Suddenly, the largest Voidborn vessel Rodriguez had ever seen emerged from behind one of the damaged defense platforms. The dreadnought stretched over a kilometer. In length, its hull composed of what looked like living shadow, punctuated by veins of pulsing red energy. Smaller Voidborn ships swarmed around it like insects attending their queen, their movements perfectly coordinated despite the chaos of battle. That's their command ship. Admiral Morrison's voice crackled through the communication system. Appeared 6 hours ago and turned the tide of the battle. Our weapons barely scratch its hull, and it seems to control all the other enemy vessels. The massive Voidborn dreadnought slowly turned toward the Prometheus, and Rodriguez felt as if some vast alien intelligence was examining his ship with malevolent interest. Sensor readings showed the enemy vessel's weapons charging, energy levels climbing to readings that defied human understanding of physics. All hands, battle stations, Rodriguez commanded, his voice carrying throughout the ship. Helm, attack. Pattern Delta. All weapons, target the lead ship. The Prometheus responded like a living creature, its systems coming online with smooth efficiency. Throughout the vessel, crew members took their positions with practiced precision. Humans and aliens worked side by side, their different abilities complementing each other perfectly under Arya's coordination. Arya, Rodriguez said, settling deeper into his command chair, give them everything we've got. The AI's response carried a note of something that might have been anticipation. With pleasure, Captain. Quantum weapons are at full charge. Acquired and locked. Firing now. The Prometheus's experimental quantum cannons erupted in streams of contained starfire that made the surrounding space itself seem to bend and twist. The energy beams crossed the distance to the Voidborn dreadnought in less than a second, striking its hull with forces that existed at the very foundations of reality, where the quantum fire touched the enemy vessel. Something unprecedented happened. The Voidborn ship's adaptive hull, which had shrugged off every previous attack, began to buckle and tear. Reality itself seemed to reject the alien materials, causing sections of the massive ship to simply cease to exist. For the first time in 3 years of desperate warfare, a Voidborn ship died, its hull cracking open like an egg to spill mechanical debris and strange energies into the void. The sight sent a cheer through the communication channels as Alliance crews witnessed their first real victory against the seemingly invincible enemy. But Rodriguez knew this was only the beginning of an even more dangerous phase of the war. The Prometheus moved through space like a ghost ship, its stealth systems masking its presence as it traveled deeper into territory that no human vessel had ever seen before. Captain Rodriguez stood at the center of the bridge, watching the view screen. display images that would have been impossible to believe just months earlier. Where star systems should have existed, only empty void remained, marked by floating debris fields that stretched across light years of space. These were once thriving. Solar systems, Dr. Amy Foster said quietly, her voice filled with scientific fascination mixed with horror. The Voidborn didn't just destroy the planets and stars, they consumed them completely, breaking down matter at the atomic level and converting it into something else entirely. The skeletal remains of worlds drifted past the ship like cosmic graveyards, twisted metal structures that might once have been space stations or orbital. Habitats floated among clouds of strange particles that glowed with unnatural colors. Lieutenant Emma Walsh shivered as she watched the display, trying to imagine the billions of lives that had once called these places home. "How many civilizations do you think lived here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "According to our star charts, this region contained 43 inhabited systems," replied Commander Tom Bradley, consulting his tactical display. "The Andorian Trade Federation, the Crystal Gardens of Nexus Prime, the floating cities of Aquatica. All gone now, consumed by an enemy we barely understand." As they traveled deeper into the devastated region, the true scope of Voidborn capabilities became clear. They hadn't simply conquered these worlds through military force. They had fundamentally altered the fabric of space itself, replacing the natural order with something alien and wrong. Even the background radiation showed patterns that defied known physics, as if the very laws of reality had been rewritten to serve their purposes. Captain Chief Engineer Lisa Parker called from her station. "I'm detecting massive energy readings. Ahead, whatever's generating them is bigger than anything we've encountered before." The view screen shifted to long-range sensors, revealing a sight that left the entire bridge crew speechless. Ahead of them, wrapped around a dying red giant star, like some impossible piece of jewelry, was a construct of such enormous scale that the human mind struggled to comprehend it. The sphere of twisted metal and pulsing energy stretched hundreds of millions of kilometers across, its surface crawling with activity that looked like mechanical ants from this distance. "That's their primary staging area," Dr. Foster reported, her voice tight with awe and fear. "Sensors indicate millions of Voidborn vessels in various stages of construction. Some of them are larger than our biggest space stations. Others seem to be designed for purposes we can't even guess at." Rodriguez felt a chill run down his spine as he studied the massive construct. The engineering required to build something of this scale was beyond human comprehension. It would have taken the combined resources of hundreds of star systems and centuries of construction time. Yet the Voidborn had somehow created it while simultaneously waging war across the galaxy. "Arya," he said, "run a full analysis of that structure. I want to know everything we can learn about their capabilities and intentions." The ship's artificial intelligence was quiet for several long moments, its vast processing power focused on the task. When it finally spoke, its voice carried an unusual note of uncertainty that Rodriguez had never heard before. "Captain, I've been analyzing their technology patterns, energy signatures, and construction methods. What I've discovered changes everything we thought we knew about this war." Arya paused, as if struggling with the implications of its findings. "The Voidborn aren't from our universe. They're refugees." The bridge fell silent as the crew tried to process this revelation. Chief Engineer Parker was the first to find her. "Voice refugees? From what? What could possibly force beings with this level of technology to abandon their home?" "The reality is collapsing," Arya explained, its tone becoming more confident as it shared its analysis. "From what I can determine by studying their energy patterns and quantum signatures, they come from a universe where entropy has accelerated far beyond sustainable levels. The fundamental forces that hold matter together are breaking down. Stars are dying faster than new ones can form. Planets are crumbling into subatomic particles. Their entire cosmos is racing toward heat death at an impossible rate." Rodriguez felt his understanding of the war shift dramatically. "So they're not conquerors. They're desperate survivors trying to escape a dying reality." "Exactly," Arya confirmed. "They're attempting to save themselves by consuming our universe's energy and matter, essentially replacing our stable reality with the patterns and structures of their own failing cosmos." From their perspective, they're not destroying our worlds. They're trying to preserve something of their own existence before everything they've ever known ceases to exist. Dr. Foster leaned forward in her chair, her scientific mind racing with the implications that explains their adaptive technology. They're not just learning our tactics. They're trying to understand how our universe functions so they can integrate themselves into it more effectively. Commander Bradley shook his head slowly, the weight of this new knowledge settling on his shoulders. So we're not fighting invaders, trying to conquer us. We're fighting the desperate survivors of a cosmic disaster. Beings who see the consumption of our reality as their only hope for continued existence. The moral complexity of their situation was staggering. How could they condemn an entire species to extinction, even to save their own universe? Yet how could they allow the Voidborn to continue consuming worlds and destroying countless billions of innocent lives? The quantum core, Rodriguez said quietly, his mind working through the terrible possibilities before them. It could sever their connection to this reality entirely, cut them off from our universe, and force them back to their dying cosmos. Yes, Arya agreed, but that would essentially be condemning them to extinction. Once separated from our universe's energy, they would have no choice but to face the collapse of their own reality with no hope of escape. Chief Engineer Parker looked up from her console, her face pale. Captain, that would make us executioners on a scale that's almost unimaginable. We're talking about the deliberate extinction of an entire species, possibly trillions of individual beings. Rodriguez stood quietly for a long moment, feeling the weight of perhaps the most important decision in the history of both species. Around him, his crew waited. These humans and aliens who had become his family through months of shared danger and desperate fighting. Captain Arya said softly, "There may be another way. The quantum core's power could potentially be used differently. Instead of severing their connection to our reality, it might be possible to create a stable bridge between our universes. A permanent gateway that would allow both realities to coexist without mutual destruction." What would be the risk? Rodriguez asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. If the attempt fails, if we miscalculate the quantum harmonics or underestimate the energy requirements, both universes could collapse into nothingness. We would be gambling the existence of everything that has ever lived or ever will live on. Our ability to achieve something that has never been attempted before. Rodriguez looked around at his crew, these remarkable individuals who represented the best of both human and alien courage. What do you think? Lieutenant Walsh was the first to speak, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what they were. Discussing, "We didn't come this far to become executioners, Captain. There's a chance to save both our peoples. We have to try." Agreed, Dr. Foster nodded firmly. We find a way to save everyone, or we die trying. The Prometheus accelerated toward the massive Voidborn construct like a silver arrow aimed at the heart of darkness itself. Captain Rodriguez gripped his command chair as the ship's hull began to glow with the intense heat generated by their passage through the enemy's defensive fields. Around them, space filled with the sleek black forms of Voidborn vessels converging from every direction, their weapons charging with malevolent energy. "All hands brace for impact," Rodriguez commanded. As the first enemy shots struck their shields, the bridge shook violently, but Arya's adaptive defensive systems held firm. The ship's quantum barriers rippling like water as they absorbed and redirected the incoming fire. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker worked frantically at her station, her hands dancing across controls that managed energies beyond human comprehension. "Quantum core is climbing toward maximum output," she reported, sweat beading on her forehead despite the ship's climate control. "Reality distortion field is building, but the process is causing massive strain on our primary systems." Through the view screen, Rodriguez could see the Voidborn construct growing larger with each passing second. The artificial sphere that surrounded the dying red giant was even more massive than their long-range sensors had indicated. Its surface crawled with mechanical activity as countless ships launched from hidden bays, while energy weapons the size of skyscrapers tracked their approach. "Captain," Dr. Amy Foster called from her science station, "I'm reading quantum fluctuations unlike anything in our database. The construct isn't just a shipyard or staging area. It's actively manipulating. the fundamental forces that hold this star system together. Lieutenant Emma Walsh monitored the communication arrays, trying to establish contact with the enemy forces. "Sir, I'm detecting massive data streams between the Voidborn vessels. They're sharing information at speeds that suggest some form of collective consciousness." Commander Tom Bradley studied the tactical display with growing concern. "They're not just attacking us randomly. Every ship that engages us is sharing its experience with the others. They're learning our capabilities in real time and adapting their strategies accordingly." The Prometheus pushed deeper into the heart of the construct, weaving between massive structural supports that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Each support beam was larger than Earth's biggest cities, yet they moved and shifted position as if they were alive. The ship's passage triggered responses throughout the alien structure, causing sections to reconfigure themselves and new defensive positions to emerge. "Quantum core at 90% of maximum capacity," Parker reported, "are starting to affect local spacetime. I'm seeing temporal distortions in our immediate vicinity." Rodriguez knew they were approaching the point of no return. Once Arya began the process of creating a bridge between realities, they would be committed to seeing it through to completion or risk destroying both universes in the attempt. He opened a communication channel, hoping that the universal translation protocols would work with beings so fundamentally different from any species they had previously encountered. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the human vessel Prometheus," he announced, his voice carrying across all frequencies. "We know what you are. We know why you're here. We understand that you're not conquerors, but refugees fleeing the collapse of your own reality. There's another way forward, a solution that doesn't require the destruction of either of our peoples." For several long moments, only the sounds of battle filled the bridge. Then, like a wave breaking over distant shores, came the response. It arrived not as a single voice, but as a chorus of mechanical tones that somehow conveyed meaning, despite their alien nature. "Your species offers mercy to those who would devour you," the collective voice said, its harmonics suggesting surprise, and something that might have been curiosity. "This is unexpected. We've encountered many forms of life across the cosmos, but few have shown compassion to those they perceive as enemies." Rodriguez felt his heart racing as he realized they had achieved something unprecedented: actual communication with the Voidborn collective. "We're not offering mercy," he replied. "We're offering hope, survival for both our peoples without the need for mutual destruction." The bridge crew worked with desperate efficiency as the ship pushed deeper into the construct's heart. Around them, Voidborn vessels continued to converge, but their attacks had become more cautious, almost hesitant, as if the collective consciousness was reconsidering its approach to these strange humans who spoke of cooperation rather than conquest. "Arya," Rodriguez said, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them, "initiate the bridge protocol. Create a stable gateway between realities." The ship's artificial intelligence responded immediately, its voice carrying a note of excitement. "Beginning quantum bridge formation now, Captain. All crew members should prepare for significant reality distortions in our immediate area." Space around the Prometheus began to change in ways that human minds were not equipped to process. The fabric of reality itself started to shimmer and twist, creating patterns of light and shadow that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. The quantum core's energy output climbed beyond all previous parameters, causing visible distortions in the structure of matter itself. "It's working," Dr. Foster breathed, her instruments registering phenomena that challenged every known law of physics. "I'm detecting the formation of a stable pathway between our universe and what appears to be a series of uninhabited parallel dimensions. The energy pattern suggests these alternate realities could provide the Voidborn with the resources they need without depleting our own cosmos." The massive construct around them began to respond to the quantum bridge's formation. Sections that had been dormant suddenly came to life, their surfaces reconfiguring as the Voidborn collective directed its attention toward this new possibility. The attacks on the Prometheus ceased entirely as enemy vessels moved into position to study the emerging gateway. "Remarkable," the collective voice said, its tone now carrying what sounded like genuine amazement. "You would grant us sanctuary and access to new realities when you could have chosen victory through our destruction. Your species possesses qualities that we had not calculated in our assessments. Perhaps there is more to organic life than we previously understood. Rodriguez smiled despite the danger they still faced. There's more to every species than anyone calculates initially. That's what makes the universe worth preserving and protecting. The quantum bridge stabilized. The first void-born vessels began to move through the gateway, their hulls glowing with energies that belonged to their new dimensional home. Other ships remained behind, their crews working alongside human engineering teams to begin the massive project of repairing the damage caused by 3 years of desperate warfare. Lieutenant Walsh watched in amazement as construction began on the first joint human void-born research station, a facility that would serve as the permanent embassy between dimensions. "Captain, do you think this makes us galactic peacekeepers now?" Rodriguez settled back in his command chair, feeling the weight of responsibility that came with their new role in the cosmos. "Better than being galactic warriors," he replied. "Arya, set course for home. We have a new kind of war to fight, Natha. War against impossibility itself, and the belief that different species cannot find ways to coexist." As the Prometheus began its journey back to Earth, carrying news of humanity's greatest diplomatic victory, the stars themselves seemed to shine, brighter with the promise of a future where cooperation might triumph over conflict.